Hi, welcome to our brief presentation regarding one of the 5 types of termination for breaching a contract. Michelle, Dom, Tiana, Jack and I will be covering the topic of breach of a condition and the consequences for such a breach. All our discussion will refer to material that is applicable to Victorian law. Contracts are entered into every day, from buying a coffee to catching a train, and everything usually goes to plan. However, it doesn't always work out due to the parties failing to meet obligations per their implied or express agreement. In these controversial situations, the courts are often called upon to resolve the uncertainty.
A contract is a combination of promises between 2 or more parties with varying degrees of importance to the overall content. In regards to conditions, it involves terms that are essential or go to the root of the contract. Any breach of a condition, no matter how trivial, gives rise to the legitimate right to terminate the contract. Thus, conditions necessitate strict performance. However, determining what is or is not a condition is a lot more difficult than it may appear.
How do we determine whether a term is a condition? In asking this question, there are 3 primary factors taken into consideration. Legislation may imply a term as a condition. For example, Section 18 and Section 19 of the Sales of Goods Acts 1958 respectively requires that goods correspond with the description and are of mercantile quality. If the goods do not meet the description as conveyed to the consumer and or is unfit for the purpose it's meant for, then the breach of condition will be found due to statutes holding the most authority. These principles originate in common law in Arcos and Ronson, where it was held that Arcos had the right to terminate due to complaints that he had ordered not being delivered to the exact lengths that were specified.
The character of a term is a very important consideration, particularly where there is no legislation governing interpretation of the term. The courts usually rely on the test articulated in Tramways and Luna Park when assessing if a term is a condition. Specifically, the case formulated a test of essentiality that asks, is the promise so important that the promisee would not have entered into the contract unless the term was strictly performed? If the nature of the term means that it is likely to be breached, then strict compliance is unlikely to be required. For example, in Schuler v. Wickerman, the courts held that the term seaworthy was overly broad in scope. A party was capable of breaching if a single nail was missing from the ship. This case also reinforced the notion that a term expressly labelled as a condition does not necessarily make it one if it was not intended to be a condition in the technical legal sense.
What happens if there is no statutory or express classification of the term? If this situation arises, the intention of the parties is decisive. Here, the Tramways test is also utilised in assessing the intention of the parties. This is done by considering the intended importance of the relevant terms and the intended consequences of failing to comply with them. Specifically, it assesses the language used, the general subject matter of the contract, the likely consequences of a breach if it was to occur, and whether damages are an adequate remedy. Referring back to the Tramways case as an example, it was reasoned that strong words, such as guarantee, are clear indications of the party's intention that greater significance should be attached to the terms. It is also important to note that the case of Anchor established that where damages are likely to be an adequate remedy to the breach, a condition is more likely to be found.
As alluded to earlier, if a breach of a condition is found, then the aggrieved party has the right to elect that performance of the contract continues and collect damages for the particular breach, or immediately terminate the entire contract and sue for damages.
Now let's review what we've learned by examining a brief hypothetical scenario. Let's say Tiana is an assassin for hire, and she's been hired by Dom to kill Harry and Michelle. Let's just ignore the entirety of criminal law for this situation, and let's simply consider the contractual implications of what is about to occur. The contract formed between Tiana and Dom expressly requires that the murders must seem like an accident.
It's got to seem like an accident.
Oh no, who just killed Harry?
That wasn't an accident.
Dom finds out and is absolutely fuming and confronts Tiana.
I want to terminate the contract.
Can Dom terminate the contract? To do so, we must decide if the phrase must look like an accident was a condition. Contract killing is not covered by statute, so let's look at the character of the term. To do this, we must apply the Tramways essentiality test. Was must seem like an accident an essential term in the contract? It is likely that Dom would never have entered into the contract with Tiana if he didn't think that she would conduct the contract in line with the stipulation. It was clearly Dom's intention that the hit be carried out to look like an accident. Therefore, it is likely that the term will be seen as a condition. Dom will therefore be allowed to terminate his contract with Tiana, and Michelle's life will be saved by contract law. Not if Dom finds someone else.